rough.
Yeah, in addition to that, I think Skylark got knocked up by one of the volcanics, which is not an affix that we almost never talk about volcanic, but Skylark also got knocked up by one of the volcanics. The loyal creation was then in the air and fervented too. So the loyal creation has like an ability that hits the nearest melee target, and that was just unfortunately not Skylark. It ended up killing off the rogue, and once you have one death on a pull of that size, then it spirals into a full team wipe rather quickly.
Yeah, unfortunate turn of events indeed for Obey Alliance. They are not out of it just yet, though. They are going to be slowly clearing this room now. What was one pull is now being split into 3 smaller pulls because they don't have those cooldowns. They don't have all those resources. They can't afford to fire off all their spears and such. They need those for the bosses, while Ambition are already into this gauntlet part of the fight, working on these assistants. They have the help of a Flesh Crafter here. One of the big reasons you see the Shadow Priest from almost every team in this dungeon is that it allows you to bring this Flesh Crafter with you for the rest of the dungeon. You just mind control it, and it will allow you to start the gauntlet, because the gauntlet starts when there are no enemies left. If you mind control it, there are no enemies, and then you get to drop it and keep having its cleavers helping you out. Although that looks like the cleaver hit Ellesmere, actually, so maybe hurting in some cases too.
Yeah, so a lot of the times you'll see like Hodge and other CC effects used on that Fleshcrafter to make sure that the cleaver doesn't go off at an untimely point. It is really hard to hit Gorgrind with that cleaver just because of these bits that are also in melee, but they get the Fleshcrafter all the way into melee right on top of Gorgrind, which makes it a lot easier to get that cleaver on top of him. I suspect that after this, Azuna's going to spam Polymorph to be able to heal that Fleshcrafter to full. As Polymorph, whenever it's cast on enemies, it does give them a little bit more HP.
Yeah, that is something that you can really do to help manage them. It heals them instantly, and it keeps healing them if they stay in the Polymorph, but even if they're in the middle of AoE, just spamming a couple Polymorphs on something can really help heal it up, so helping them keep that Fleshcrafter alive. That's because they actually want that Fleshcrafter to be with them to the end of the dungeon. They want it to be throwing cleavers at the bosses as well.
Alright, so now Rot Spew has been engaged for Ambition. On the side of Obey Alliance, oh man, they're still just dealing with... They had to do these packs one pack at a time. So this just proves like how difficult those pulls that all of these teams are doing. They're utilizing multiple weapons that are present in the dungeon, and it's still the point where if you make one minor mistake, you have a full wipe on that pack, then you have to do one pack at a time through the remainder of the Necropolis, which Obey Alliance is able to finally pull off. So they're in position to where if Ambition has a full team wipe, they could potentially capitalize on it, but they're going to need a lot of help.
Yeah, that's the thing, is it really is not going to be just like Ambition having an oopsie, right? Having somebody die and get rezzed, having a weapon used at a wrong time, hooking Stitch Flesh at a bad time. It can't be anything like that. It's going to have to be something that involves players dying and releasing, I believe, from Ambition.
Alright, so now Surgeon Stitch Flesh has been engaged. It is a 23 Tyrannical, to note. So a lot of the times teams, whenever this dungeon would be on like lower key levels or a fortified situation, this fight would not be too dangerous. However, if there are any mistakes that happen on Surgeon Stitch Flesh, we've seen time and time again where teams can potentially wipe on stuff like this. And immediately it looked like the Stitch Flesh's creation got hit with a javelin from JPC. It's important that if you're going to throw a javelin on this fight, you need to make sure that you cleave both Stitch Flesh and the creation. If you miss that creation, then you can start to be in a world of hurt, as you're going to then have multiple creations out at once, and that will eventually wipe you if you do have to sustain having multiple of those abominations.
Yeah, exactly. They start getting enraged, and things start getting very, very scary. It stops being reliable to use their hooks as well, because they're just hooking each other, and so, like, you know, if two of them are like right on top of each other, you're basically never going to be hooking Stitch Flesh. But not the world we live in today for Ambition. Good news for them, very bad news for Obey Alliance that that's not the world we live in, because with that boss down, there is only one more boss left. One opportunity for things to still go wrong for Ambition. Now, this last boss fight, it's not a walk in the park. It's a plus 23 Keystone, and it's Tyrannical. So A lot of difficulty here. There are a few weapons that are available, though. Looks like JPC hasn't. Yep, there's going to be the weapon. Some
The hammer.
forge hammers getting thrown in. I think a spear also being deployed
had a
by
javelin.
Nerf. Yep. So this is huge damage on the boss. And you can see already at 70% health. Damage taken increase as well, so everybody else's cooldowns are further amplified by these effects. Plus the throw cleavers are going to be landing from that flesh crafter that they've brought up here with them. So they're doing a lot of damage, but it is going to start slowing down now, and they're going to have to start dealing with the last little bit of this boss.
Oh! Onesie is so young on that Shadow Priest. He was able to grip Azuna out of the Dark Exile. Nobody in chat should be spamming B for Boomer. Onesie showing how good he is on that Shadow Priest. Able to immediately take him out of that exile. And a lot of the time, you would die after the exile expires. However, since it was on a mage,
Beware.
he blocks off that exile debuff and is not going to have to pay the 5-second death penalty. That is massive for Ambition.
Youthful reaction time from Onesie. Beautiful timing. As his friend Azuna returned to the battlefield, Onesie, unfortunately, his reward for his heroic efforts is going to be sent down himself, and can't life grip yourself back onto the platform. Unfortunately, the technology just isn't quite there yet. Maybe with that life grip legendary, actually, but we'll talk about that another time, as it is Ambition taking the 1-0 lead in this series. Beautiful play, one death, but still a great run.
Beware.
Wow. I remember when you could life grip yourself. Never forget. But with that victory, Ambition is going to be having a 1-0 lead over their opponents. And, you know, it's something that we've seen time and time again for a dungeon like Necrotic Wake. Zyro is just having any sort of death can just mean complete wipe for your team on some of these pulls. And even just looking at how Skylark and company was trying to group all those mobs in together, I saw that Frost Nova come down and it just messed up how well they were able to group together the mobs, which impacts their damage.
I mean, mages and Frost Nova. I mean,
Beware.
Yeah.
what two
Yeah.
things go together better in any dungeon? Oh, I was proccing my disciplinary command. Well, you're playing Frost Mage. You don't have that legendary. Why did you Frost Nova there? It's unfortunate to see. We'll break that down a bit later on. But, I mean, across the board, Obey Alliance did play pretty well, right? I mean, it all came down to that one wipe, really. Both teams were trading blows and trading mistakes across the dungeon. Ambition able to pull it out. Not the fastest time we've seen all weekend. Those honors still go to Complexity, but unfortunately they're not in the tournament for those anymore. So Ambition got to be pretty happy with that run. Only 20 seconds slower than what we saw earlier this weekend.
That's right. And let's also just focus in again, like you mentioned, zoom in on some of those pulls that we have here, because there was a lot of back and forth before, again, Obey Alliance's catastrophic wipe.
Yeah, I mean, they were just kind of trading random spot healer deaths, which is honestly the worst kind of death you can possibly have, but both teams doing a good job of making sure they're able to continue the pull after the healer goes down. Lightbug just goes down to... He hesitated on his movement, right? He wasn't sure
he just
on where he
hesitated
was.
running out.
And again, another healer death at probably the worst possible time in the dungeon. During a boss, gets destroyed by a necrotic breath. Probably another hesitation right there. I mean, you ever hesitate whenever something deadly coming out, there's a 50-50 shot, you're going to die to it. You know, either you do or you don't. And again, both of these were kind of trading blows. These teams were neck and neck as Amarth went down. But this pull in particular, you can see where it starts to go wrong. Bu went down early to having too many of the fixates and them not having any easy way to stop them. And then once that happens, once the rogue goes down due to not having cheat death, the pull starts to just last longer and longer and longer. And it looks like they were going for that pull where they could save the spear on their rogue. And it just didn't work out for them. The pull lasted too long with one DPS dead and ended up being a full team wipe for them. And I mean, obviously here, there's not really much to break down. We just wanted to show you how ridiculous the single player burst is on this boss. This boss gets completely melted for the first 10 seconds.
Run away.
It does. And, you know, I feel like we've talked about that a number of times before, how bursty a lot of classes can be with Covenant abilities. This expansion just allowing it. You just see that the boss's health go to 50%, and then all the damage just sort of stops.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the things that the Fire Mage was really good for.
Run away.
From Complexity, right? The burst with this spear debuff was insane for burst. They had this boss at like 20% at the point here where Ambition had it at 40%. I don't think that's going to be something many teams will be able to opt into, nor should they swap their strat in a dungeon that they already hit. Like Ambition already has a dungeon this clean, but it's just interesting to know that there are faster strats available if you have extra time to practice them.
That's right. And, you know, big advantage to go to a lot of those teams who are in the upper bracket, who are able to start looking at these other team strategies and what's going to be coming, because, you know, it's nice for both of these teams, you could say, that we're having Necrotic Wake go on at this point, because we're also going to see it for whichever team is fortunate enough to make it to the lower finals here. So going to be something that we're going to see again, and if these teams aren't making it, well, other teams are definitely going to be studying what they're doing. So Theater of Pain going to be the next dungeon in our series. It's going to be fortified bolstering. We've talked about it a ton throughout this weekend of how annoying those affixes can really be here, Dratnos, and you know, let's talk about it. We've had some route differences here and there, but overall this dungeon, I mean, it's just about maintenance of these mobs.
Yeah, we've even seen different compositions pioneered by different teams, and in fact, in some cases, the same team with complexity swapping
Run away,
their
little
plans
girl!
between
Run away.
yesterday and today. So I'm curious what these teams are going to land on. Whether they decide to go with, for instance, the Vengeance Demon Hunter or the Protection Warrior is a pretty big point of divergence between different teams. The Protection Warrior in here, Spear of Bastion, really strong in Theater of Pain. Spell Reflect, fantastic for several of these boss fights as well. So big pluses.
Run
for
away,
that
little
strategy.
girl!
Of course,
Run
Vengeance
away.
has a huge heap of pros that we all know about. That Chaos brand, the huge power of the meta defensive cooldown. So those are just some of the things that I'm going to be looking for here.
This should be an Obey Alliance bulwark, as they had to play this map. It was their first map
There
in
you
their
go.
first
Good
series
work.
of the weekend, and like whenever they played it versus Aster Y, they ended up losing it. They only had one death, but at the same time, they should have an insane amount of practice in this Theater of Pain. I know a lot of the teams put insane effort into their first 3 maps that they would have had to potentially have played, and I suspect that Obey Alliance is going to show a lot of really good stuff in the Theater of Pain again, and I think that's probably going to be one of their most consistent maps. Now it's going to come down to, like, the ball is in Ambition's court. How are they going to fare in the Theater of Pain that we haven't seen from them yet?
That's right, because we did see the other side as
Run
well
away,
from
little girl.
Ambition
Run
previously in their
away.
first series. So now it's just going to be kind of that game. And we've seen a number of times where, yes, there is that expectation that, hey, if this team is going to be practicing this dungeon, it's going to be in their very first round. This is going to be something they're excellent at. But we've also seen teams who have just been so well practiced across the board at their different dungeons who are saying, doesn't matter where we're at. So, you know, Ambition, with all the talk of how much time they put into Mist, particular
Beware.
Dratnos, I think they're going to be well prepared for this one too.
The sick part for Ambition is, you know, if they prepared for the upper bracket, that's one way of doing it,
Beware.
right? Or they might have also prepared for losing round 1 to Perplex and going into the lower bracket. But if they'd done that, they wouldn't have ended up in this match in the bracket. This is like a
Beware.
blind spot series of maps for them in the tournament, where the only way they were going to get to this match was the exact combination of wins and losses they had,
Beware.
where they had them to get on this side of the lower bracket. Definitely a strange place to be for them. I wonder if that theater, if these dungeons are in fact ones
Beware.
that may therefore have been a little bit neglected, or if they show up in the other matches anyways and they're ready for anything, as a team of their caliber I'm sure can be.
Well, let's keep in mind, I mean, JPC, the man, did make his Echo Pick'ems saying that they were going to win against Perplex, and he still got a pretty high score there, Dratnos, on his selection. So I feel like the plan that was there from the beginning.
Stop.
Yeah, I think he may have indeed been going with an innovative strategy of trying to win as many maps as possible. So, definitely a creative choice, worth discussing,
Yeah.
I agree.
On a more serious note, I think that this dungeon
Stack.
should probably be Obey Alliance favored, and I think that DOS, like you were bringing up earlier, should most likely be Ambition favored, but at the same time, it's about consistency between these two teams. Obey Alliance looked notably not lit in their DOS earlier with like 15 deaths. It was not a great run as Zyro and Jack in unison put their head in their hands.
Would you say they've been more dogged?
It was an 8th.
This
Wow,
lobby's
the
played for
bulwark has
second.
multiple definitions as well. In addition to being that barrier, it can be an extension of a ship's sides above the level of the deck. I didn't know that.
Can we build a bulwark
right.
between ourselves and Jack?
With those jokes that you're trying to give us, Tettles, you want to stay away from me? You're more than welcome to.
Man, this is going to be a difficult decision to picking which side of the bulwark I want to be on.
your jokes put you on Tettle's side, all right? This way. Tettle's side, okay? You know exactly where you stand on this one, but we don't know how these teams are going to stand in the lower bracket, whether they will stay in this tournament and make it the championship Sunday, or whether they will be eliminated and tossed off the bulwark, as Ambition and Obey Alliance are now preparing for their Theater of Pain matchup here. Ambition, of course, up 1 in our series, and Obey Alliance is fighting for their very survival here, Zyro.
I mean, I just don't like the bulwark word. Why are you guys using that? Stop it.
He started using it randomly.
You guys ever just started saying a word so many times that it starts sounding weird and kind of loses the meaning in your head? Like bulwark. Like what even is
Build a
that
bulwark
word?
on your bulwark.
After all the Wowhead work I was just doing, it's quote for me. I'm trying to say quote again, just looks funny. But hey, let's get into it. Game's ready.
Oh, thank
Save
goodness.
us from the Tettle's jokes here. Let's get into it. Ambition up 1. Theater Pain begins now.
Prot warriors on both sides here, with Ambition and Obey Alliance deploying mirrored compositions from each other as they both are getting involved with the first boss here. Looks like Obey Alliance have the Bloodhorn added to this pull. Ambition is getting late for them.
Skylark, notably with that shield, he has the Bulwark of Azeroth equipped currently. Very timely.
Love that indeed.
All right,
And
so now
his
Ambition
weapon?
taking a little bit of a lead, but Passerin, look at that, at 40% HP. I think that this is one of those things that you need to make sure that Sathel and Passerin are kicked and grouped up very quickly. Otherwise, you're going to have to put a lot of focus damage into that. And so Ambition looked like they were taking the early lead. However, with Obey Alliance, they were a little bit more even split on a lot of their bosses, and that could allow them to kill off the first boss early, but they killed. They bolstered their bosses a little bit.
Right, they Obey Alliance actually dealt with quite a bit of extra boss health from the bolstering affix, whereas Ambition, by pulling the Bloodhorn in later, didn't have to do that much. Even when you factor that in, though, Obey Alliance are going to be getting the better of this exchange by about 5 seconds, so not too bad there. Ambition gets the benefit of getting to kill the mob afterwards, and it's free time anyways, right, because you're just doing this RP, so a little bit of extra efficiency there. Let's see what the teams decide to do next. Is Executioner Varuth going to get involved? Yes. Skylark throwing some axes, pulling that forward, and so are Ambition. They're going to be pulling it into the Cult of Rockwing. This is very standard pathing through this dungeon, pulling Varuth with 4 or 5 of the Shackled Souls into this little area.
Okay, so do you think that there is any difference realistically in where both of these teams are tanking it? So the reason that they're tanking them on the corners is they're trying to get the Shackled Souls grouped up quickly. But I feel like Ambition's place on where they got this mob grouped should allow for Varuth to die just a little bit faster. However, Obey Alliance get the better of this exchange, and they're able to get their Shroud off early, and they're just continuing to build a bit more of a lead right here.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, empirically, it looks like things are going better for Obey Alliance. Looks like that pull included, as they're now getting into this Portal Guardian Arcoleth pull. We're also adding some Shackled Souls right in at the start of this pull. This is sketchy for Obey Alliance. Very careful. You can see Rally used there by Skylark, trying to help everybody stay alive. 40 being chained. Huge AoE damage coming out from the Portal Guardian and the Incinerator. They need to be careful to not bolster that Portal Guardian as well. Barely they've been able to do it just before it gets to its next Storm cast. And now they just have Arcoleth left over.
It's interesting, too, that you see Onesie there. He enters his turtle, and he enters the turtle for like 2 to 3 ticks of that Soulstorm, because then he knows that he won't tick down from any more damage. He knows that if he mitigates 2 to 3 ticks of that Soulstorm, that's plenty. Ellesmere will be able to keep him topped up. And Ambition comes roaring back and kills Incinerator Arcoleth almost at the exact same time as Obey Alliance. And did Obey Alliance have a DC on their Windwalker Monk again?
Is that what's going on here? It looks like they've decided to go left, whereas Ambition are going right, so we'll get to see if this ends up changing the time as well. I don't see the Windwalker on the meters here, so that may indeed be the case for Obey Alliance.
Man.
If so, extremely unfortunate turn of events for them. Ambition working on these 2 Magi, doing a good job actually of breaking through one of those shields that was up so that they don't have bolstering become a problem here. When you only have 1 Dispel which they do because they just have the hunter pet for it, then that can often be quite a problem. Obey Alliance, though, starting to have deaths actually on these shackled souls now, potentially as a result of that. They are going to keep running with their route, which is exactly what they need to do here. They are currently undefeated in games in which they've had a DC, so they're hoping to keep that streak going. Got to keep the spirits high, got to keep your mind focused on, okay, what do we go from here? How do we adapt? And how do we still keep ourselves in this thing? But Ambition definitely have been given a huge gift here from that.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that Zorthus DC'd earlier in their Spires of Ascension, but they were able to claw it back off the mistakes that Team Name made. And they're definitely still in a similar position, but Zorthus definitely needs to reconnect to the game. Rapido.
Yeah, the longer that this goes on, the more and more damaging it's going to be to Obey Alliance's chances. Ambition here, you know, they are not a team that is known for having huge wipes. They are a team that's lost some maps, but rarely is it to big wipes, and more often it's small to medium-sized mistakes. However, Obey Alliance are going to waste no time. They're going to get started with this pull once they have their cooldowns. No Monk, no problem. They're going to keep on chugging through this dungeon and make sure that they can keep themselves in a position where the mistake
Ellesmere
needs to not be that big for Ambition in order for them to catch up, which is just what's happened here. Ellesmere going down. Actually, a bolstered Bone Reaver as well. It could potentially start to be pretty scary. They have managed to finish it off, but that is the battle res gone for Ambition. Without that battle res, the path to a huge wipe has just opened up dramatically for them. The chances that a mistake turns into a wipe have gone up hugely without that battle res available.
So Quaking, we don't really talk about it too much, but Quaking in Theater of Pain is actually a very nasty affix. Just a lot of the bosses, they either have grips or they require you to be stacked up with other party members, and that can allow for potentially very bad Quaking overlaps, which does put you in position to be able to have those mistakes that occur. And the Windwalker Monk for Obey Alliance is back.
All right, we are back on plan here. Probably about 2 minutes of DC time. Not impossible to overcome, and they did a good job of clearing out some trash anyways, but they need to now recover, get back on plan, make sure that all the cooldowns are lining up still in a way that makes sense, make sure they haven't scuffed any of the pacing that needs to, like, they need to get back on to good pacing, fast pulls, big pulls to keep this one going. We'll be able to get an idea of just how much of a loss this was. It looks like about 2 trash pulls worth of time is now in favor of Ambition as they do get started on Cult the Rock here. We'll see if and when they decide to pull some Shackled Souls into this one, or if they decide to just do the boss by itself and get that count later.
All right, and so now Ambition dealing with Cult the Rock. It's like we were talking about. They have to be really careful about Quaking. Azuna and Onesie both go to different sets of these hands. Notably, if you're standing close to the edge of the room, you can't get the hands at the top. And right now, like we were talking about, Obey Alliance cannot afford any mistakes. Lagbug does go down. They do have a battle res available if they can deploy it. That Bone Mage that was blinded off to the side has so many stacks of bolstering on it right now, Dratnos.
That is an extremely large Bone Magus. That Bone Spear cast cannot be allowed to go through. If it does, it will kill somebody. Lagbug eventually gonna get back into the fray here. Wow, yeah, that was really, really costly though for Obey Alliance. Even more time slipping out of the hourglass for them as now Ambition almost done with Cult the Rock, whereas Obey Alliance, during the time that Ambition have been fighting this boss, have only dealt with that one trash platform. They are now getting to this next trash platform, and they are about a boss and a half behind where Ambition are at right now.
Yeah. All right, so now Ambition finally getting rid of Cult the Rock. I'm interested to see where they go from here on out. So a lot of the teams have been going to this Gore Chop wing, and one of the big points of this Gore Chop wing is how large these teams are able to pull here. Are they going to be pulling the pack that patrols on the bridge? Are they going to elect to just kind of leave that there and break this up into 2 separate pulls? Are they going to potentially not pull that pad at all and then shroud by it? There's a lot of difference in what teams can and have done across the whole entire weekend, but it looks like Ambition being patient, waiting for that patrol to get into position. JPC walks over, trickses the pack all the way in, and so now this pack is just going to be blown up by the power of that MM Hunter and the Windwalker Monk. 2 very, very potent burst AoE specializations, and Ambition is looking really good here.
Yeah, lots of damage being dealt to these mobs. Important priority damage as well being done by JPC to those larger health mobs, making sure that they don't get a bunch of bolstering stacks when you finish with your Windwalker AoE. Really, really masterfully executed by Ambition. All of that trash. I mean, being able to do that with that bridge pull like they did, truly incredible performance there, as they're now shrouding towards the downstairs area here. Not too much time left in this dungeon. Obey Alliance still working on Cult the Rock as well.
Beware.
Probably something like 3 minutes in favor now. Our Ambition as they... Wow, this is so scary though. This is such a huge pull. Here comes the Ashen Hallow. There's like 20 mobs in here and 10 of them are deadly.
Yeah, but notably those small mobs that spawn, all of those little disgusting refuse mobs don't bolster anything. The only thing that will bolster out of those packs are the sludge spears. So making sure that you bolster kill this whole entire pack while dealing with the small mobs is super important. And that gas bag is your top priority, and ultimately the reason that they're dropping Ashen Hollow on a pull like this is because that gas bag's pulsing AoE is so deadly.
Yeah, that thing has been taken care of, though. Once again, Ambition really putting on a clinic with these really scary, scary pulls. They are now going to be taking these two mobs into Gore Chop. This is going to require some discipline from their players to avoid bolstering the boss early. Once those mobs are free from that binding shot and enter the fight, they need to be really careful to not assign too much damage to them without them bolstering the boss.
So, spinning crane kick?
Yeah, spinning crane kick is probably allowed. We'll see, though. I'm sure that they have an idea of what the percentages are where they can or can't press those different AoE buttons.
That button is definitely not allowed. Those mobs are JPCs. He's laid claim to them. He's planted a banner in them.
I see. Well, I just saw spinning crane kick, though. Oh, looks like Azuna.
That's illegal.
Really on Azuna Curry there. Really not being chained by the subtlety rogue's needs.
JPC will write him a strongly worded letter later.
29% here on Gore Chop and falling. Doing a great job of damaging but not killing those trash mobs that are in this pull. Very well done. Even now, if it gets a bolstering stack here in the last 20% of its health, it's also not that big of a deal anymore. Worth just doing to keep the damage efficient. It's going to be AoEing everything now. It's going to be a horror that lives a little bit longer than everything else. Nerf taking a lot of damage as well. Gets that lay on hands and the dispel. Just the horror is left over. Once they finish that off, it is going to be Zav the Unfallen's wing. Meanwhile, on the right-hand side of our screen, Obey Alliance are sneaking down towards that huge bridge pull. Let's see if they go quite as big as Ambition did here.
All right.
Yes, they do.
Ooh, yes. Look at this. They're grabbing all of this trash as well. This pull is probably one of the hardest MDI pulls that you'll ever see. And immediately Skylord gets lay on hands by Lagbug. On top of that, also getting sacked. That's whenever your tank needs both of those things, he is in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I think that may have been the bubble sack as well. The lay on hands bubble sack. That's the macro you press when things are very bad and you need a lot of help. Ambition.
That was a lot of help that did come through. Ooh, and the rogue dies for the side of Obey Alliance. I didn't see what happened, but then that diseased horror, it was probably the rogue's kick that needed to happen.
Run away, little girl.
He just channels a full meat shield.
Yeah, this is going to slow them down quite a bit. They do have a battle res. They do decide to send it, needing to keep it to stay as close to the time as they can here. But Ambition already nearly done with their first mini-boss. They'll just have a little bit more left, and then they'll be done with this dungeon. Obey Alliance are running out of time to close this gap.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So our Australian representatives on the right side are going to be making their way into Gore Chop. I'm interested to see if they're going to be able to have the composure to be able to not spinning crane kick the ads as well and allowing the rogue to be able to lay claim to those ads. Ooh, they drop a freezing trap and a para on those mobs as opposed to just utilizing like a binding shot or a mage root and some of the other stuff that we've seen from other teams. So maybe they're just going to full AoE them once they come in. We're going to have to see in just a moment's time. Ambition on the left side of your screen have made their way into the Zav wing, and they're setting up this champion mini-boss pull. This is very dangerous with this mini-boss right here. You have these Arbalists and these Conscripts and the Arbalists do insane amounts of damage. And it looks like their champion that they threw a freezing trap has broken out of CC somehow and is walking towards the group, and it's going to get bolstered if they're not careful.
Yeah, the binding shot is going to be used here, and you can see the team adjusting position here. Bolstering is fairly short range. It's about 30 yards, in fact. It's exactly 30 yards. And so as long as you can keep the mobs far enough away...
Oh, missed the freezing trap!
The trap misses. That is exactly what it looks like when I play Hunter in PvP. And unfortunately here for Ambition, that means 1Z, as a result of his mistake, is going to then be killed also. So it's another death added to the board here. They've got to be really careful here. This is going to cost them a lot of time. This might be the way that Obey Alliance gets back into this game. I don't know if they can lose 3 minutes here, but if they keep this pull going and then end up wiping anyways, that could exactly be what does it.
Oh, now Nerf has to commit wall to this pack, and he's still dropping so low even while walled. Please heal Nerf GG.
Yeah, Nerf in so much danger here. That captain is just in the middle of this pack. Yeah, the Ring of Peace from Azuna, keeping those mobs off of Nerf, followed by the binding shot. And once Nerf can get those mobs all into that binding route, they will be able to safely AoE them a little bit more. That bash really hurting Nerf here. And he's got the Ancient Aftershock. That's going to knock him down, keep him knocked down for a while longer. And finally, after what feels like centuries, the captain is going to die right before it would have killed Nerf.
But like the Chumbawamba song, they get back up again, and now Ambition making their way into the Zav wing. They're going to meld off that one champion, and that's a massive time save. Those champions are not super efficient. They give like decent count, they give 20 count apiece, but that's not something that you're looking for in this dungeon. This dungeon is so rich with count, and you get a lot of your percent from other portions of the dungeon, like that massive pull that's in the core chop area.
Right, it's the fact that you pull the entire platforms in the Cult of Rock wing, it opens up the space to just skip in this area.
Another thing, too, is Ambition is not going to have that champion to be able to effectively DPS, and then, like, one Quake!
Azuna has been eliminated here. Yeah, he's been assassinated by his team. Brutal quaking overlap. And they are going to get that battle res out, but now Ambition do not have any battle reses for the remainder of this dungeon. And look at Obey Alliance fighting their two mini bosses together here. This is a scary two to fight at the same time. They are going to put the prio damage into the Whirlwind one, because as soon as it dies, they are safe to pull the other one into the pack. So even though it's bolstering, sometimes you can do things like this where you still prio something down and just cleave the other one and then take it into more trash afterwards. That's exactly what Obey Alliance are going to try and do. However, Ambition, despite the difficulties on this fight, despite the challenges they've had to overcome, looks like they are mostly stable as of right now. 18% and falling on the boss. Without that battle res, they are lacking a safety net, but they might not need it here.
JPC, push the talking native, presses down his bind.
Protected.
Only one word is murmured. Wicked, he says, as he runs over Azuna with quaking. Alright, and now Ambition has dealt with Zav, and they're making their way towards Mordretha. They do have 2 Tormentor debuffs that they have to deal with. In addition to that, they have 5% enemy forces count. Those are those mobs that are at the very beginning of the dungeon. They're going to pull those into Mordretha whenever the boss is at somewhere around the 50% HP range. And if you give me one moment, I will get us what is the best time in this dungeon so far. Oh,
they're
no,
going to fight him before
solo.
the boss. Let's see. That is the normal strategy, like you said, but I guess they're just waiting for the RP here. They didn't send somebody up early and kill the captain after the boss because of the way things worked out. So instead, they're just going to do this, right? You see what Obey Alliance is doing? Because that captain didn't get pulled in like it did for Ambition, they'll be able to have 4 players kill it while the 5th goes and starts the RP. On the side of Ambition, there was nothing to be doing with their time anyways, so they decide, let's just kill this pack, and then we'll fight the boss by itself. So it's an audible from them based on that thing that went wrong earlier.
Yeah, I think that's ultimately a really good audible. The best time in this dungeon, though, 16:59.
Yeah,
so
this is not going to be that.
Ambition has had some mistakes. I don't know if they've had that many mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, they have lost quite a bit of time to various things throughout this dungeon, but you're right.
This is true.
I am a little bit worried about their path's ability to get below that 17-minute mark, but we'll have to see. I mean, we really did not see a great showcase of exactly what it is they can do in here. However, with Mordretha dropping even lower here, they are so far ahead at this point. 2 or 3 minutes of advantage, and there's nowhere near enough time for Obey Alliance to close this one back up. Just a little bit more damage is all Ambition is going to need in order to secure their ticket into Championship Sunday at their first ever MDI Global Finals. There it is, 2-0 victory to Ambition over Obey Alliance.
Ambition, the number 8 seed in this tournament, has just secured their spot in the top 4 for our global finals. You know Ellesmere and the whole team has got to be really happy about that as they take that victory in Theater of Pain. And Obey Alliance, fortunately, is going to be headed home after this game. And while they have been a team with a ton of MDI veterancy, this tournament has been absolutely brutal for so many of these teams who have very high expectations for Zyro.
Yeah,
Beware.
this victory sets us up for a very golden lower semifinals tomorrow
That's
between Ambition
right.
and Incarnation. Only one of them can go forward, and only one of them can use that top 3 finish to negotiate for a better contract with the organization after tomorrow's
Beware.
I'm really excited to see how that one goes.
Huh.
Johnny has to pick a favorite child. Dranos has to decide who to give the route to. It's a lot on the line. It's going to be a lot on the line for tomorrow and Championship Sunday there. But, you know, we talked about it a number of times before, especially for when we start looking at how we compare these dungeons to the best times that have happened. And these lower bracket games, I don't know if it's fatigue or what, Tettles, but we're not having the best dungeons we've had yet. There's a lot to work on.
Australian internet is not known to be the most reliable, I will say.
That too. And I think that puts a huge damper, of course, on Obey Alliance. It was great that they overcame it in their previous series, Inspires of Ascension, but I know it's got to feel terrible for them, and I feel so bad that they have to experience those things, you know?
I mean, that team is so good, too. Like
They are. They really are.
We talked about it before, even going into the match. They had beaten Ambition 2 series before.
Beware.
It just double disconnects. It's so unfortunate for them in the Theater of Pain. There's not much you can really do about it. Like ultimately, it's just a part of like playing from home, right? And it's one of those things that you have to be able to provide your own internet, and it happens. I mean, I think that we've all been there where we've just DC'd at the. Yep, hopefully.
Someday. That's right. Hopefully. At some point. But let's take a look at our bracket as well to summarize our day, as we are, as we said, going to see Ambition and Incarnation filling out our lower semi. Earlier today, Dranos, we did get to see Echo and Aster Y. We're sitting up there in the upper finals. Both of them have guaranteed at least the top 3 finish.
Yeah, so tomorrow we're going to be starting off with that game between Echo and Aster Y, the winner making it straight into the grand finals, the loser going down to face the winner of Incarnation versus Ambition, and that is going to be a brutal slog through the lower bracket. 3 matches in a row, potentially, for either Incarnation or Ambition if they are hoping to win this tournament against progressively more scary enemies as well. Going to be incredibly grueling.